Hello and welcome back. I'm Arjun Vishwanathan, and today we're going to be in conversations with very eminent folks from the pharmaceutical and the banking industry. And this particular panel discussion is attempting to focus on the new frontiers that are emerging, ready to transform the very realm of the BSSI and the pharma sectors as we know them today. So, without further ado, please put your hands together to welcome for what clearly promises to be an amazing conversation. Gaurav Kataria, Chief Digital and Information Officer, Sai Life Sciences. Gaurav, welcome. We're delighted to have you.
Thank you, Arjun. It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you. And Amol Pai, Chief Technology Officer, State Bank of India. Amol, thank you so much for taking time out for us. Delighted equally.
Thank you very much. The pleasure is mine, and I'm excited to be part of this particular panel.
Absolutely, gentlemen. Without further ado, I'm going to maximize this segment that we have, about 30 odd minutes, because we've got much to cover. Gaurav, with your permission, if I could come to you. Now, increasingly in the pharma life sciences sector, we're seeing technology taking center stage, whether it's in clinical trials, manufacturing, patient engagement, other undertakings. And the big question really that is on top of everybody's mind is the whole concept of, can India be the next clinical and drug superpower of the world? In that sense, the whole two terms, which are fairly pervasive today, which are digitization and digitalization, yet closely intertwined, for their ability to vastly challenge traditional operating models. What do they mean for you in the life sciences sector?
Yeah, thanks, Arjun. I think that is a very relevant and pertinent question in today's day and age. And specifically, as you mentioned, right, like the pharmaceutical industry is going through its own tosses and turns and, changing fundamentally on how we operate, right? So before I sort of jump directly into the question, I've always been a firm believer that, whether it's digitalization or digitization, there are three levels at which, organizations should look at application of technology or going down this path, right? And, it can create different kinds of outcomes, right? So the first outcome that it can create is an outcome right, which is to help you drive operational efficiency, right? That's sort of the bottommost pyramid. It's sort of the biggest bang for buck, where technology can sort of bring to you. The second piece is creating, new revenue generation models, right? So use of technology, use of data to really create new revenue generation models and new go-to-market models, right? The third piece, which is often overlooked, but it's extremely critical, is the human or the societal element, and what impact can technology create on the human side or the societal side. And if you see, there are multiple examples that have come up during the pandemic where, simple examples like, using vision analytics or video analytics to check whether an individual within an premises has the masks on or the social distancing being maintained, predominantly to drive safety, right? Similarly, there are multiple examples of safety for workers, etc., right? So all of these three layers is something that we should keep at the back of our mind, whether, when we are jumping into any of these initiatives. Now, if you look at pharma as an industry has been a fairly traditional industry.
Indeed.
A lot of paper-based work happening, not only on the manufacturing side, but on the lab side as well. So if you see, every scientist who does experiments in the lab has to note down what the experiment entails. And if you are a FDA approved site like we are, then you also need to maintain and follow something called the CFR 21 Part 11 as a compliance, which means that every data needs to get recorded and every data needs to have an audit trail, and integrity of data has to be proved back, as and when required. Keeping all of this in mind, the digitization, which is sort of the, or digitalization, are sort of baby steps that you need to take to move from a paper-based system to a paperless system.
Paperless system.
Right? To go digital, predominantly for record keeping and data capture. That is sort of the first. Then you get on to other things within the pharma sector, which is getting into plant automation. And, this whole realm is extremely, extremely interesting now, right from a drug discovery, which is sort of the first phase of, creating a good drug, all the way going down to manufacturing, delivery, logistics, right? Getting it into the end consumer. And not only, the teams are not stopping at that. Technology application not stopping. It's actually going down to the level to say, did the individual actually get the jab that that person wanted, right? And COVID app is a great example to start tracking the vaccination levels and things like that, right? So the technology is starting from discovery all the way down, and we can talk more as we go forward. But, a huge impact. And, just to sort of put this back in context with the, people talking about the third wave and things like that, the only reason we've been able as a society to get, the vaccine so quickly, which traditionally will probably take, an 8 years to manufacture. The only reason we were able to get them in 8 months was a great application of technology, harnessing the power of data, artificial intelligence, etc. And we can talk about it more.
That's fascinating, because that's exactly what I'm going to bring to you, Amol. The banking sector is leveraging emerging technologies to manage change on many, many fronts. In fact, even probably impact the future of banking in 2022 and beyond. Now, my question to you, therefore, is how, in your view, does the whole concept of technology, digitization, and digitalization alter future banking products, services, and solutions to unite value and purpose?
Arjun, I think I strongly feel that the panel that you have chosen is pretty good, because for me, we always keep talking about something called as a super app. I mean, the buzzword has been going around for quite some time. And while State Bank of India has YONO, which is covering your lifestyle needs as well as your banking need, right? Right from the time you set up your account all the way to your management of your credit card, your insurance, your loan, your credit card, your DMAT, your banking needs, payments, that entire canvas is covered. Now, as far as the super app is concerned, what next? So obviously, YONO has got shopping. But I strongly feel, and that is where things are going up, emergent right now, is that one of the most important needs for a human being is obviously the well-being. Indeed. So the well-being piece is something which is getting covered recently of late, because of the uptake of digitization on the pharma and the medical front. So I do feel that 2022 is going to be very exciting, because the super app will finally start to take shape, wherein it will be banking, lifestyle, shopping, and your medical needs. Your medical needs would entail both your healthcare as well as your the medicines that you take, the diagnosis that you do, so on and so forth. So I am pretty much excited from this particular aspect, that very soon we will start seeing an amalgamation of banking as well as healthcare coming together in some sort of an app. Okay, so for me, that is one thing to look out for in 2022. Now, coming back to the question that you had in terms of how exactly would banking progress and the uptake. So yes, COVID has done one thing, is that people have started to adopt the digital way of life very, very easily. So there is no need to push anyone. In fact, people are adopting it and they are asking for more and more services, which typically means that bank has started to accumulate a lot of data in terms of the usage and the financial needs of a particular person. And that has helped us to use the whole gamut of machine learning and artificial intelligence, so on and so forth, to keep pushing more and more products. So, every bank does track what are the number of products a customer has with that particular bank. And I can tell you now it's a lot easier because of all the data that's available. So we keep pushing the products to a particular person. With a new edge now coming up, is that when you start pushing up lifestyle products, we also have the healthcare data available with us. So that amalgamation is now that coming together is going to help and make the product more purposeful for that particular customer of ours.
Now, while at that, Amol, if I could just stick with you, there's obviously been the pandemic, the disruption has perhaps been a natural catalyst to driving a greater number of people to use digital ways and means for the banking needs. But there's also the larger question of technology being pervasive in the sense that it is able to drive far more fiscal inclusion, far more plurality of the bringing in the unbanked into the banking ecosystem. How do you see the application of technology in being able to do that? Especially
Uh,
tier 3, tier 4 towns, villages. There's so much more to be done.
Correct. So, one thing that is uniform because of the pandemic is the way the lockdowns are happening and the way people are getting restricted. Okay, so it is not just the demand for banking needs to be available on the phone. It is also about the type of phone that you are using. Okay, so that's why you have recently heard about UPI and all coming in a wallet mode, so that even the feature phones are getting covered.
Yeah.
So all this is a push towards the financial inclusion itself, because they want the person who doesn't have a smartphone but has a feature phone but yet has banking needs to be made inclusive as part of this entire digital ecosystem. So that work has already begun. That's the first. Okay. The second thing also here is that banks are also going out of the way to ensure that people who can be brought into the digital fold are being brought in one way or the other. Be it, the fingerprint based kiosk, the AEPS based kiosk, where the person actually goes over to the person's house and says that, okay, you can scan it with your kiosk. You may not have a smartphone or you don't have a super app on your phone, but this is how I can bring banking to you. Then there is banking at the doorstep being delivered for senior citizens, but it is also getting availed by a lot of other people also. Means they have an account and now they would want to avail these kind of services. So obviously there is a lot of push both from the banks as well as from the regulators and the government to bring people into the fold. And given the lockdowns, the isolation and all, there is a demand coming in. It is not about us pushing the service. There is a demand. So somewhere both these two are meeting up. So I believe financial inclusion. So it is like earlier we would have an account opening mela and you would try to open up people, try to bring in the unbanked, and then the account would just go dormant. Correct. Because it was a drive. You opened up some few crore accounts and then that's it. But now it is no longer the case. There is an account opening mela, but that account is active. The account is getting serviced. There are transactions happening. So I feel
fascinating set of events that have led to this. Because Gaurav, I bring that to you too. The concept of demand is certainly not new to you. And India today stands poised to be not just the drug producer to the world, but also the drug research center of the world. Now, in that sense, Gaurav, when you particularly spoke about technology for good and outcomes, also leading to societal good, how do you see technology playing a part where there's a pervasive and broad-based, a healthy society of sorts, where drugs for everyone, medicines for everyone can be researched, produced, created here in India? How do you see technology play a role there?
Yeah, so Arjun, that's probably a topic which is very close to my heart. And if you see the way the pharma industry as a whole, or a healthcare industry as a whole is sort of evolving, technology is being used at every stage.
True.
Right. So if you start right at the beginning when you want to do a drug discovery, right, and I'll tie this back to the question that you mentioned, right? If you're trying to do a drug discovery, you start off with, doing some experimentation on the biology side, then you sort of go into the chemistry side. I'm just sort of simplifying this for all the viewers. You go on the chemistry side, right? And then you sort of get into toxicology, and then you get into some sort of animal trials before you actually go on to human trials, and and that's how the process starts. Now, right at the beginning itself, traditionally, one of the big challenges was that when you do all of these trials, let's say you're trying to do trials on organisms or bacteria, or you're trying to do trials with animals, there is a whole push by the animal rights activists to stop using animals for animal trials. And a lot of industries have moved away from it. Like the cosmetic industry has sort of moved away from trials on animals or human trials or whatever before they launch products. Interestingly, technology is stepping in. So there is databases, there is simulations which is happening. There is a huge application of artificial intelligence, machine learning, which is happening to tell you if a certain drug is given to a certain kind of patient with a certain kind of your cell structure, how will it actually react? So you actually do it using technology to a large extent. And then the final bit, which is actually required for the regulatory purposes, because the regulation hasn't changed, and for the right reasons as well, right? Because you can do all sorts of computer simulation that you want, but finally, when a drug hits an individual, you don't know what's going to happen in the body, right? So the clinical trials still have to happen in person, right? Some of the animal trials still need to happen in person before you can go to. But the bulk of the heavy lifting is getting crunched, from a time perspective, and also from a society impact perspective, moving on to digitization and computers and, simulations and stuff like that. So that is sort of right at the beginning, right? If you go to clinical trials, lots has changing there, because one of the big problem with clinical trials used to be, patient registry. How do I register patients to actually sign up for clinical trials, right? That anyways, with the pandemic, people realized that I can't get a patient into a hospital. Let the hospital go to the patient. So there are a lot of startups which have come up. I'm not sure so much in India, but at least in the US, and I see the same trend following here, where they're actually taking clinical trial kits back to patients and then putting them monitoring solutions on top of them to sort of continuously monitor their health the way they would have monitored them when they were in the hospital. Right. So you have sensors put on, you have, a wristband given, so that all that data is going real time, for data capture to really figure out how that drug reacted. Right. If you now go to the next level, same things happening on the manufacturing side. Technology is all persuasive. We're going to automated plants. Even at SAI, we're going for plant automation to a level where, if I have to run a certain batch for a certain chemical, the engineer on the shop floor goes and presses a button, and 36 hours later, the batch is pretty much done. And if there are alerts, then it will obviously tell us proactively that there is something that's going wrong. So we're sort of moving into that direction of the predictive alert mechanism and things like that, right? But if you look at all of this, a lot of this technology and a lot of the startups are coming from India.
Yeah.
Right. The talent is coming from India. Even the global talent, there's a lot of the talent sitting in India, right? India has the scale required from a manufacturing standpoint. From an R&D standpoint, interestingly, a lot of the move that we see, global pharma is preferring India as a destination, as a contract research destination. And I'm not even going into manufacturing right now, right? But from a contract research, where you actually need the brains, you need the scientists to actually do the drug discovery, like I said, whether it's biology or, whether it's medicinal chemistry or anything else, a lot of that stuff is coming to India. And, with whatever has happened around China as well, right? And the negative sentiment that's got created there, a lot of them are trying to de-risk themselves and move away from China and come back to India. So India is becoming the go-to destination because of multiple reasons, right? Technology is available, people are available, and talent is available. Our education system is actually, becoming a boon, to aid this whole transition. So research absolutely is here to stay. And as you it's sort of going to an absolute extreme, right? You were talking about personalization of medication. That is the new frontier.
It is.
Right. So if a Gaurav needs a medicine tomorrow, or an Arjun Vishwanath needs a medicine, or an Amol needs a medicine, I can pretty much, print the medicine on a 3D printer.
Absolutely.
Right. So there are pills being printed on a 3D printer, and FDA has actually given approval to, one company out of UK for 3D printing of pills. Wow. Right. And it's so fascinating. There are already experiments happening on the labs where they're trying to 3D print human organs. Yes. Right. And an earlobe, for example, has already been 3D printed. They've tried to do experiments on 3D printing of a liver, for example. So it's really, really exciting times. And I think the next 10 years, this is a slow process, because you're talking about the human lives here. It's a slow process.
Next 10 years for sure.
But the next 10 years will be completely transformed, and you'll see a lot of personalized medication and a lot of research. And then India will be at the forefront, to drive this.
Fantastic. Because, gentlemen, I come to now a segment which is personally very, very close to my heart. In a lot of ways, Amol, I come to you. This particular conversation, this dialogue that we're having is all about discovery. If in the pharma sector, it's about drug discovery. In your sector, it is about discovering new customers. And of course, discovering what customers want. In that sense, Amol, enough and more has been said about data being very, very pivotal, very, very critical. Have we even, however, scratched the surface? And as we march into 2022 and perhaps beyond, what is the real application of data that you see being applied on the ground to craft incremental business outcomes?
I would say till 2021, when we talked about data, Arjun, it was all about text data, textual data, correct?
True.
And I can tell you that not just India, the world over, everyone has become super mature in terms of handling textual data. All the AI and the machine learning algorithms, the way we think, the way we create our data models, the way we create our algorithms, everything has been centered around text data only, correct? Come 2022, with the advent of 5G, with the advent of IoT, we are now entering into a new realm of visual data,
Yeah.
audio data, and machine data coming in from IoT. This is a new kind of data set, which I'm telling you, everyone is waiting with bated breath. I mean, there is going to be a huge deluge of this kind of data, and it will open up new frontiers. Like if I'm constantly speaking and my emotions are getting analyzed, the words that I use are getting analyzed, my choice of words are getting analyzed, the language that I use is getting analyzed, it means something much more than like a person had called at so and so time and has requested for so and so loan. That is textual data. But now you color it with the emotion on top of it in terms of saying that where is this person standing? At what point of time did he call? How did he express his need? How long was the conversation? Correct? What kind of language has been used? So this particular data is which is going to come in now, or rather has started to trickle in, is the next frontier according to me. And you will see a lot of these algorithms getting altered, not just to factor in the textual data, but also to factor in the visual and the audio data that's coming in. So I think we are back at square one as far as analysis.
What are your views on that, please?
Yeah, so I think in the pharma industry as well, and I think I'll sort of borrow a lot of the stuff from Amol, right? It's no longer only about text data, right, or structured data, right? It is far more complex now, because the way the industry is moving, we are sort of moving from a digital twin of a factory was a concept which came 7-8 years back.
Yeah.
We still haven't seen a big reality of it. And that was predominantly because the bandwidth to really capture the data and the edge computing capability that we had, that we could put in the factories, was very, very, I'll say, nascent, right? Now that it's catching up, you'll start seeing digital twin of factories coming to life in 2022 and beyond. But interestingly, on the other side, there's a digital twin of a human. Right? How do I give a personalized medication to a Gaurav without really understanding what's happening within Gaurav? Right? Which place to be targeted? What is the ailment? Right? All of that is now starting, and people are already experimenting and starting to check that out with multiple sensors and things like that you can actually put, within the body. There's obviously pros and cons to, or there is, the right wing and the left wing, or whatever, right, you might want to call it, to say that, is it the right thing to do? Should we digitize, leave the humans the way they are, et cetera, which will always be there. But, there's a great opportunity to extend the quality of life, right? To increase the longevity of life at the end of the day by the application of the right medicines and the right interventions at the right point of time. And that is what we are moving towards. And all the other examples that I gave you around, right from discovery all the way to manufacturing, and there's lots happening on the logistics side where, the UN, for example, has a program, and one of our startups out of Hyderabad is part of that program to make sure that the delivery of drugs in all the 100 United Nations countries, where they actually disperse vaccinations and drugs, do they actually get to the right person in that village sitting in Botswana, for example?
True that.
Right? How do we really track the last mile, right? So there's a lot of technology being applied, and all of this is being, possible because of the use of data.
True that.
Because without data, there's no
None
way
of
I
this
can
is
get
ever going to be possible.
Yeah, right. And it's absolutely, and it's starting with baby steps, at least from a pharma industry, the way I look at it. If I see the continuum, we're starting off with data collection and data organization, data lake creation, and all of that stuff, right? And I think BFSI is far, far ahead in that journey. But pharma is getting started. At least traditional pharma manufacturing and drug manufacturing and all of that is getting started, where the data collection, data prep. Second layer is to really look at, do a little bit of data analysis, dashboarding, really figure out what the data is talking to you. And third is to drive insights and predictive and all of that good stuff that we really want to get to.
No,
So it's
absolutely.
a journey,
Couldn't
right?
agree more. No, couldn't agree more at all. Because I do have a view on the clock, and I've got 5 minutes left in this particular segment. Amol, I come to you in conclusion. Now that we've established the application and the role that technology is going to play, and to the largest degree in that sense, your individual strategies are also fairly established. The job of the CIO, the CTO, the Chief Digital Officer, is increasingly to bring about an integrated framework for the convergence of strategy and technology. In that sense, Amol, from the perspective of this wonderful audience that's tuning in to us today, what is your essential guidance for a new generation of emerging technology and IT leaders and practitioners on three essentials that they should look at as far as technology is concerned in 2022 to start with, and of course beyond?
So, see, I would say that a lot of groundwork, at least as far as the banking industry is concerned, it's already put up in place. Okay, so the whole concept of digitization, appification, API creation, so on and so forth, a lot of that groundwork has happened. What is the way going ahead? I would say cloud will definitely play an integral part. There are no two thoughts about it. I mean, there is no way that you will be able to thrive in the 2022 plus and onwards without having cloud as part of your strategy. Correct? So one is, yes, keep looking out for new innovations happening on the cloud and keep looking at how to include it as part of your overall strategy. Second is this entire 5G rollout, the IoT rollout, edge computing is going to be important. I mean, whether you like it or not, they are going to be integral to your strategy very soon, because they will offer you new areas which earlier wouldn't have been thought about. The way, I mean, the outreach, the way you get to reach out to your customers. And then the third part that will be very much important for you is this, how do you utilize the data that you are harvesting? Because the more services you offer, the more feedback you keep getting in. So whatever data you get back, and as I said, data, not just text, but now you have to factor in machine-based IoT data, you have to factor in visual data, you have to factor in audio data. Whatever keeps coming back, how do you keep harvesting it so that you are able to offer fine-grained services to the customer? So for me, these are the three major areas to look out for. I personally feel it is not a story just for 2022, but this is the story which will last for the next 2 to 3 years, because it will be somewhere in the mid to the third quarter of this particular year that the rollouts will begin. So this is the theme for the next 2 years.
That's actually fairly supremely and very powerfully articulated. Gaurav, same question. Three things that you feel emerging, in fact, existing and emerging IT leaders should put into practice 2022 and beyond.
Yes, I think Amol's already covered the technology part fairly well, so I won't sort of go down that path, right? I think according to me, a couple of things that we still need to do as leaders is, one is, understand the business problem, right? Somewhere as technology leaders, we sort of go down the path of, tech being supreme, right? But I think we need to flip that a little bit to say the business problem is supreme, right? The business imperative is supreme. What is the board saying? What is your CEO is saying? What are your business unit heads saying, right? So that is excellent. So start with that, right? Start with the clear definition of the problem statement, and then figure out what technology will really be applied to solve that business problem. So that's sort of point number one. Point number two is, often I've realized within an organization, or if you're trying to sort of disrupt the market, the change management becomes a big challenge.
Yeah, that is true.
Right? So while you can create brilliant technology, but if it's not going to get adopted, you have a challenge, right? You've put in some good dollars behind, bad dollars, so to say. So how do you really drive change? So start with the top, get the leadership buy-in, get the board buy-in, whatever you're trying to do, right? From a digitalization perspective, right? Or otherwise as well, right? So start with the top and make sure that you're able to percolate and put a very concerted program around change management, right? So that's sort of the second thing. And as we go forward, I think the third piece is around the human element or the societal element, right? Which is important for us to keep in mind, because that will also help us drive when we develop products and applications, we'll be able to keep the human in the center, right? At least in the pharma industry, human is in the center.
Yeah, of course.
So how do you keep the human in the center? How do you apply design thinking? How do you apply, paradigms? And how do you apply approaches to make sure that that the lives of everybody where technology is going to touch is actually made simpler rather than more complicated? Because very easy to complicate life with more technology, right? Just a bad UI design on an app can absolutely put the other individual off and confuse the hell out of the individual, right? Who's using that app.
That is true.
So how do you keep in mind that human element and then drive all transformation, keeping the human in the center to keep it all simple, right? So I think those are the top three.
No, fantastic, gentlemen. But this has been truly a very enriching conversation. But that's very unfortunately all that we have time for. Amol, Gaurav, truly a privilege to have spent time discussing all of this with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arjun. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. And to the audience, that was I, Arjun Vishwanathan, in conversation with Amol Pai and Gaurav Kataria. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a moment.